We are now resuming our Sri Ram series. We have already held 2 lectures. I always briefly explain to you what it is about. A very beautiful book. I know that the people who watch my lectures say that I always say the same thing. It's my bedside book. They say, you have a bedside encyclopedia. Almost. This is one of the main ones in my bedside encyclopedia. It is a very beautiful book with a structure of chapters that are quite independent. You know those books you can open at random, and any chapter can be read regardless of what comes before or after, and yet it is very profound. So, it is an old tradition to give lectures on the entire book, as I did previously with The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. I gave a lecture for each chapter. So, for those who did not attend the first and second sessions, the chapters are independent. Today we will talk a little about virtue. Very briefly speaking about this author, Sri Ram, who was an Indian philosopher who lived in the last century. I always mention the dates, because memorizing dates is not really my specialty. He passed away in 1973. And his entire body of work is very rich and very interesting. This book in particular, Seeking Wisdom, addresses a series of fundamental elements of human life. Among them is today's chapter, which is about virtue. What is virtue, after all? In fact, it is a word that has lost much of its credibility in our times. He begins by saying precisely this, that words, in general, have lost their credibility. This is a concept he revisits from Plato, just so you have an idea. Plato said this 2,400 years ago. He said that even then, words had already lost their credibility. Now add 24 more centuries to that. Words have become hollow and discredited. This means that simply uttering a word does not bring with it, necessarily, its true content. The two things have become separated. There are certain words that act as a key. You must possess the moral conditions to open that door, and to enter and see what lies within. And when people have greatly lowered their moral standards, their depth, they may have the key, but the door does not open. So you say, love. What is love? I have no idea. Something what people keep saying to one another. Say on Valentine's Day. But what does it truly mean? Sometimes on the day after of Valentine's Day, it is no longer there. What is it, in fact? So, there are many words that are empty. He considers that virtue is one of the most important, and consequently, also one of the most empty. So today, let us talk about this, the beauty of virtue. It is always interesting for us to try to retain an idea from each of these chapters. I have a habit of making summaries, synthesis. I believe that, in the end, when faced with death, we will look back, and we will need to be able to make a good synthesis of our lives. The main ideas that were lived, assimilated, and passed on. I think this is a good habit. I hope that you can retain some idea, that you take from this some idea, whether practical or simply interesting. He says that the meaning of words is discovered through life and action. It is no use just picking up a dictionary and opening it. You will see a lot of synonyms. But the synonyms will mean as much to you as the original word. It's like if I say a word to you in German, and you don't know what it means, and then I give you a synonym, I don't know, in Mandarin. You will have two words that are synonyms of each other, but both are unknown to you. It won't help at all. He says that you discover the meaning of words in practice, in life, and not merely by picking up others whose content you also do not know. He goes on to say that wisdom, virtue, or virtues are words that have become extremely discredited. They have even acquired a certain moral stigma that people reject, especially young people. To say that someone is a sage seems almost religious, as if it were a mystical title. It gets to the point where people doubt that wisdom even exists. The same goes for virtue or virtues. It seems somewhat strange, almost like a kind of Puritanism. These words generate a certain sense of rejection. They have come to mean almost nothing. That is the truth. He goes on to say that there has always been a concern with enumerating the main human virtues and defining what virtue is. The Greeks did this, Plato did it. He spoke of prudence, temperance, courage, and justice. Medieval Christianity would speak of charity, innocence, and purity. There has always been a quest to try to define what virtue is and which ones are fundamental. Because, in one way or another, at least those individuals who were more prepared, more mature within society, understood that human beings need to develop virtue, that this is what we are here for. However, these terms have often become hollow over time. What prudence meant to the Greeks is no longer the same for us. He will speak about the tradition to which he belongs, which was Indian. He will speak about the Mahayana tradition, Mahayana Buddhism. This Mahayana Buddhism enumerates 7 virtues, which they call the 7 portals. For those who are familiar with a very beautiful book by Helena Blavatsky called The Voice of the Silence, she speaks of these 7 portals. There are 7 virtues, each one opening the door for the next to follow. So that, ultimately, the human being may reach the greatest of virtues, which he will discuss. And he briefly speaks about these 7 portals of the Mahayana school. The first of them, notice, the first portal is dana, charity or immortal love, selfless giving, motivated by altruism, with heart and mind attuned to all beings. In other words, dana, summed up in a single word, is surrender. It is said, Sri Ram and many other authors speak of something very interesting, that most of our problems, if not all of them, stem from one attitude, thinking too much about ourselves. Have you ever stopped to think about that? An excess of concern with oneself. Sometimes I even feel a certain fear. When we turn to philosophy and use that ancient Greek phrase from the Delphic oracle, know thyself. People often think that know thyself means to delve ever deeper into the smallest details of their own personality. Sometimes, knowing oneself is about understanding more of the human condition, which is altruism, fraternity, love, and thinking less about oneself. So, you notice people desperate to know their temperament, their horoscope in the Chinese zodiac, the Western zodiac, from every possible source, all the minute details of their personality. And yet, they are absolutely uninterested in what is happening to humanity, to all around them. So the first thing he presents is dana. Dana is this, turning outward, perceiving life, giving oneself. The offering of our energy, of life itself, to the needs of the life that surrounds us. In other words, to place oneself in service, to think less about oneself. So, this would be the first, just the first, of the virtues of the 7 portals. The second is Shila. Shila corresponds within the Noble Eightfold Path, which is also a Buddhist tradition, to the noble livelihood, to the right way of living. Shila means that all your ways of living, every aspect of your life, should be pure and upright. Harmony in action and in word. In other words, there should be nothing of which you could be ashamed. That is, what we call privacy is not bad, it is good. It is necessary. But privacy should not be a space to hide things of which you are morally ashamed. Privacy exists so that you can reserve certain things that pertain only to yourself. It's as if I were to say to you, you come into my house, and the living room is all tidy and beautiful. You ask me, but are you hiding something from me? Don't you have a trash can? I do, it's in the service area. I am not hiding it. Out of a sense of decency, I will not put the trash in the living room. I want to show you my best. But I don't tell you that there is a trash can in the service area. Everything I have is part of the law of necessity, and I am not ashamed of anything. My entire life is coherent and serves some purpose. There was another philosopher, much later, whom we talk about quite a lot, Immanuel Kant. He said that this is one of the thresholds of morality. It is that action which, in some way, cannot be sanctified, cannot be assumed openly in the light of day. In other words, any action in your day, you should be able to pause the scene. You know what we do during the quadrilha at a June festival? We stop for a photo, pause the scene, take a picture. And that moment should not embarrass you. It is justifiable, it fulfills a need. So, this is what we call harmony, in all aspects of life, It is the second virtue. Third, Shanti, sweet, unshakable patience, tolerance, and forgiveness. Tolerance in the positive sense. What does tolerance in the positive sense mean? It is not passivity. If someone is committing a crime, you will do what needs to be done. But that does not mean you are being intolerant toward that person. You act out of compassion for them, because the best thing that can happen to them is to be held accountable. If they are not, the next vice will be even worse. Tolerance is not passivity, but an action in which there is no hatred or rejection involved. Those who understand this well are parents. Parents often find themselves in a rather amusing situation. The child misbehaves, and you know that you have to scold them. But inside, you are dying to laugh. And the child looks at you because they are clever. If you show even the slightest urge to laugh, you lose your authority. You have to put on a serious face, but inside, there isn't a drop of anger. You do it because you know the child needs that little scolding. We should have this ability to correct the people around us. We really should. It is a very important virtue, which is the virtue of tolerance. That is, I do what is necessary for this person, so that they may correct themselves morally and grow. But inside, not a drop of hatred, because if I harbor hatred, I will be unjust, I will be excessive. And I will not educate, I will traumatize. What will arise in that person will be rebellion, not learning. Do you understand? So, this is the sweet tolerance known as Kashanti, which will generate a great capacity for justice. Without it, this possibility does not exist. Next comes Vairajaya, indifference to pleasure and pain, mastery over illusion and perceiving only the truth. This also reminded me of a scene from my childhood where I had a niece. I have a niece who is exactly the same age as me, and we had an interesting habit. We would look out the window and argue about which star was ours. That one is mine. Then, from time to time, a conflict would arise because she wanted exactly my star, even though there were thousands in the sky. Then an adult had to step in to mediate. This star is yours, that one is hers. Imagine the situation for that adult. They know all too well that the stars belong to no one, but they have to resolve the conflict between the two so that both can be at peace. So, this part of the sky is yours, and that part is hers. This is somewhat like the ability possessed by someone who has Vairagya. Well, he deals with things, he takes care of things, but he knows that nothing truly belongs to him. And he does his best for the things that pass through his life, but he does not feel ownership over anything, he is not attached. He knows that things are like the stars, they are not his. And likely these things will be here when he is no longer. You look at objects, I don't know if you have this, something from your grandparents, and you look at it, the object is here, but the person has been gone for long. What an ambition it is for us to think of ourselves as owners of things. A person who has Vairagya does their best for the things in their care, but they know that the idea of things belonging to them is just make-believe. Therefore, they do not suffer when they lose them, because they never felt like an owner. Can you see that? So they have overcome this illusion. And then they perceive only the truth. What is truly yours cannot be taken from you. If even this could be taken from me, then it is not truly mine, so I am not attached to it. I have an attachment to the truth. And anything else is as if, let us say, a messenger who temporarily takes care of something. It simply passes through your hands. Gibran has a phrase that I find very beautiful, which is the enriching post, the place where the gifts of life are enriched. That which passes through my hands, I enrich it and allow it to continue on its path. And lastly, well, not quite lastly actually, it's the penultimate point, virya. Virya, which in Proto-Indo-European is the root of the word virility, virile. It is energy. It is closely related to a word we have in Portuguese, which is gera, grit or determination. A virtuous person is a strong person. Sometimes we mistake virtue for weakness, but virtue is actually strength. Those who possess virya have an intrepid energy, arising from the spirit, unconditional, yet with the utmost ardor. Do you know what that means? It is a capacity for grit, for giving your very best. Well, what if others do not receive it, do not recognize it? What if the seed you have sown does not bear fruit? I am sorry, but I will continue to offer the best seed, and with all the intensity one can. It will not remain the only seed in my silo. I will give them all, wholeheartedly. Ah, but people did not recognize it. What a pity for them, isn't it? But tomorrow, I will do with double the ardor. Tomorrow, I will give all my energy. I will go to the utmost. It is a capacity for grit, for embracing life, without considering any other possibility, except to give oneself entirely, to offer everything. There's an image that I find very beautiful from Professor Jorge Angel Livraga, the founder of New Acropolis, who spoke about a candle. Today we have beautiful candles with lovely shapes. When we receive one, we feel so sorry to light it, not wanting to ruin it. I have a Venus candle at home. Just imagine the birth of Venus, Botticelli on a candle. Who would ever light something like that? But think about it, in Brasilia, with this dry weather, if you don't light it, and I've experienced this, it dries out, crumbles, and dies all the same. But it dies without ever having been born as a candle, without ever having given light. That's sad, isn't it? Human beings are a bit like candles. We are born to give light. Ah, no, I will spare him. Well, spare him, but he will die all the same, without ever having been born as a human being. He is like the candle. He too was born to give light. So virya is to give your all. This feeling that you must come into the world and deliver your message. A tremendous drive to go to your limit, never less. No, no. Negotiating with the gifts of life. Dhyana, which is contemplation, which you will see is the origin of the word Zen in Japan. When it passes through China, it becomes Shana. When it arrives in Japan, it becomes Zen. Dhyana, which is contemplation, is a very special contemplation. You will soon understand that these virtues, one is born from within the other. And ultimately, for Sri Ram, there is a very simple equation. To evolve is to overcome selfishness. And that's the end of it. To evolve is to overcome selfishness, to realize that separateness is a fallacy, a deception. Realize that the universe is all interconnected, that we are one. The closer you get to this, the wiser you become, the more virtuous you are. Dhyana, you will see, is a capacity for meditation where I do not look at the chair and try to understand it from my own point of view. I want it to be soft because I want to sit on it. I want it to be beautiful so it matches my decor. I try to think about the chair from its own perspective. It is the ability to merge with the observed object and see it from within. I always tell a story, and most of those who attend my lectures already know my little stories by heart. But there are some that are very good, and I still haven't found better ones. And others that are even better, so please forgive me, but I have to tell this one. It's about my daughter. When she was little, there was a time when we lived in Paraíba, and there was a big concern about saving water. Everyone was worried about conserving it. And she came home upset. She was in kindergarten at the time. She came home upset because her little friend said she wasn't going to save water. After all, her father could afford to pay for it. And she said, "Mom, I thought that was so mean." Because it's not about whether her father can pay. It's about the water itself. Poor thing. She feels sad when we treat her that way. I had never stopped to consider a child's ability to see water from the perspective of the water itself. Poor water, it would feel sad to be mistreated like that. To be treated carelessly. Imagine that, within a child's innocence, there is a bit of dhyana in this. It's not because I know how to use it that it won't run out. Are you familiar with this phrase? If you know how to use it, it won't run out means the following. If I'm certain it won't run out, I use it however I want. Because I am thinking from my own self-interest. To think from the perspective of the water. The poor thing will feel sad. This is dhyana, seeing things from their own point of view. And dhyana will guide us to the last paramita, the final gateway, which is prajna, perfect understanding. Because if I see beings from their own perspective, I come closer to understanding the truth of each thing, the essence of each thing, which perhaps even the being itself has not yet discovered. And I help them to discover it. Because then it will build a bridge to something else truly remarkable, which is true love. This ability to help each being discover their own essence. The fusion of your essence with the essence of that which is observed. So, these are the 7 virtues within the Mahayana tradition. And then it is said, this is an extremely demanding statement, a reflection I always have with myself. To reach, if not to live, at least to love the truth in itself, without a trace of self-seeking success or projection in everything. Do you see? Even if I cannot fully live the truth at this moment, at the very least, first, be certain that it exists. Second, be certain that it is worth it. To seek it. Third, to love it, the truth. And not what I can gain from it, or the prestige it might bring me if I possess it. To love the truth. How can you attain the truth if you are not even certain that it exists? Because in our current world, if you tell someone, you know the truth, they will reply, what truth? Because what is true for me is not true for you. Look, that is highly debatable. Be careful, because every group of beings has something that is true for them. Photosynthesis is true for plants. Instincts are true for animals. Goodness, beauty, justice, and fraternity are true for human beings. They are not relative. You may not agree, but they will continue to be so. It's like that old story from the Middle Ages, when everyone thought the earth was flat at that time, and the earth remained around, completely indifferent to the opinions of people. Truth is not the result of human opinion. There are things that exist in themselves, independent of human opinion. If there were no humans, these laws of nature would still exist. Truth is a law of nature. To recognize this, and to love the truth, this is something that holds tremendous power. If you consider that it has an existence of its own, a law of the universe, then there can be nothing more important for you to acquire than this. I have another old example, one of 1,001 uses, which I often use in the philosophy course, and I ask you to imagine the following. Renata, let's say she lost a 100 real bill here inside the school. So we will help her look for it, because she needs this money. Let's help her. She thinks she lost it in the library, but I saw her over there by the stairs. So, I have the impression that she got distracted there on the stairs and must have dropped it there. Then I will look on the stairs and return it to her. Will she be angry with me because I contradicted her opinion that it was in the library? In the case of a material thing, that would be ridiculous. She will be grateful because she would have spent the whole night searching in the library and still not found it. And much more important than her opinion that the bill was in the library is actually finding the bill. Isn't that right? Why? Because when it comes to material things, we have no doubt. That would be madness. Now, when it comes to truth, notice this. How do people generally reason? We are searching for the truth about something. You realize that he knows more than you do. Even so, I fight for my opinion because otherwise everyone will think he knows more than I do. Just imagine, John, you're going to leave here and ruin my reputation. In other words, have you ever seen this happen in a discussion? Someone suspects that the other person is closer to the truth than they are, but they still won't give up their own opinion. Why? Because this will make him loose. Because he ends up at a disadvantage, and for him, finding the truth is not what matters. What matters is that people think he is the good one. In other words, there are a number of things more important than the truth in our hierarchy of priorities. Among them are our image and our status. What does it mean to seek the truth if you are not actually looking for it? So, to perceive truth as something that holds supreme value, Plato said that if there is no love for truth, it is not possible, for example, to have a dialogue, because each person will go their own way, because what is being defended is one's own image, and there are many images. The truth, in this case, which is singular, would unite. Images divide. So, if you cannot fully live the truth in some of its aspects, at least know that it exists. And love it, make it your goal. That is the minimum. Through truth, you will find the truth within yourself, which is your identity, your virtues, your love, your sense of justice. Everything that is real, you will discover along this path. Otherwise, you will enter and leave life with nothing but shadows. You will be a puppet of illusions, and nothing more. You will enter and leave life empty-handed. He will say, if not, what you will have at a certain moment is doubt, and even rebellion against the ideal. So I was telling you, there are truths, and the human ideal is one of them. No one can dispute that the human ideal resides in justice, in fraternity, in love. Do you have any doubt about that? It is as if it were a pyramid. Each person ascends by their own face. but all move toward the same apex. Just as animals evolve through the pursuit of instincts and plants evolve through the pursuit of energy, human beings evolve through the development of these human values, which are called the human ideal. Now, one of the fundamental elements of the human ideal consists in fraternity. And fraternity will require you to let go of things belonging to the small self, the ego. For example, selfishness will not suffice. For example, thinking too much about oneself will not suffice. Some things will have to be left behind. If you seek the human ideal, when you wish to let go of those things related to the small self, such as vanity, it will hurt. And if vanity matters more to you than the human ideal, at that moment you will abandon the ideal for vanity. And you will turn against the ideal. And you will even find justifications for doing so. No, I am better accepted by society, being as I am. I can interact better with people. No, I've been very stressed lately, just a little vanity, it's nothing serious. This is interesting because when what Sri Ram calls our personality, that structure with which we currently identify, makes a mistake and does not want to take responsibility for it, it usually finds someone else to blame. It cannot bear to accept responsibility for its own mistakes, so it looks for someone else to blame. The person who seeks self-improvement, who seeks truth, who pursues a human ideal, when he cannot bear the demands that this ideal imposes, he also places the blame on it. No, this sort of thing isn't practical in our times. To be altruistic, to be fraternal, to combat any form of vanity, no. That's not practical, that was for Plato's time. Today, that doesn't work. This is making my life unmanageable. This can lead to a denial of the human ideal and a settling for comfort. I don't know if you've ever heard of a Mozart opera called The Magic Flute. Are you familiar with it? It features a prince who sought mysteries, who sought the truth, and there was also a birdcatcher named Papageno. The only thing he wanted was to find a Papagena, get married, and live happily ever after. Nothing more. I remember that once, a student said this to me in the classroom. I found it very amusing, but I always thought that the happiest character in that opera was Papageno. Why will I bother seeking the truth? What if it turns out not to be pleasant? And that was something very curious to me. So, after many years of teaching, I have had situations in the classroom that have taught me a great deal. For example, someone choosing comfort over truth. Preferring what is pleasant over what is true. Choosing what is pleasurable over what is good. This is characteristic of a society that idolizes comfort, a materialistic society. It is very difficult to argue under these conditions. Very difficult. So, if you do not truly seek the truth, do not believe it exists, and do not strive, as much as possible, to love it, there will come a point when you will not be able to endure, not even the demands it makes along the way. You will not be willing to pay the price. I have told you this story thousands of times, but as Reed Globo says, it's worth watching again, because these little stories are valuable, they help us understand. It's the story of that king who very much wanted to be accepted as a disciple by a Buddhist master at a monastery. He was a very generous king. He would often go there to listen to the master's teachings, but the master never accepted him as a disciple. Then one day, the master decided to put him to the test. The prince came to him and said, "Master, today I heard people in my kingdom talking about selfishness. I don't know what that is." Because he was generous, there was no poverty in that kingdom. A prosperous kingdom, people lived well. So he asked the master, "Master, what is selfishness?" Then the master thought, "This is my opportunity to teach this man why I do not accept him." He put on a face as if he were angry, offended. "What kind of question is that? Foolish. How can you ask me that? What ridiculous thing to ask, what stupid question at that?" King jumped in shock. "What is this? How can you treat me this way? Who do you think I am? I am a king. Show me respect." Then the master said, "See, this is selfishness. Do you know what that means? Material things. I am capable of giving, but not my image. Do not touch that. When you leave the physical plane and enter the emotional plane, I no longer have any altruism at all. That, you do not touch. My social status, my image, the need to be recognized by everyone, those, I will not give up, no. A person is as great as their altruism. It is said that the more you give, the more life asks of you. There comes a moment when you say, not this. All right, life will respect that, but that is your measure. Do you understand? So, the path will always be this one. There comes a certain moment when we say, not this, and we look for someone to blame outside ourselves to escape this path, which would be the path of human improvement. He will keep speaking. Another thing that is very interesting and to me is the root of the ethical question in our current times. I find this statement very profound. He says that virtue is not an imposition, but a free expression of the natural and incorruptible good that exists within all of us. Understand this. Virtue is not coercion, it is conviction. You can create a ton of laws telling people, do not steal. Why won't they steal? Because there are people watching, because they will be punished, because they might be arrested, because they will have to answer to the law, because it will compromise their social image. But if they were in a place where no one was watching, where there was no punishment, why wouldn't they steal? If they have not understood this as something good, noble, and positive, isn't this a perspective that should radiate from within themselves? Do you see? You are what you do when the last door closes behind you. In other words, no law, no one is punishing me. What do? I do this for myself, because I respect myself. Because I see this as noble, just, and good. I do not deserve this. But people won't recognize it. Their problem. I recognize it. I do not deserve this. Well, that is an ethical person. Now, make a multitude of laws to forbid people from doing these things. And do not give them the opportunity to discover virtues within themselves. Look at the very first exception that arises. At the first sign of social disorder, they will do anything. And we are tired of seeing examples of this within society. There was an earthquake, and you sometimes see people from the middle class going there, breaking store windows, stealing a lot of things. Have you never seen this happen? There was a situation of social turmoil. People went there and took advantage of the situation. Why? Because virtue was merely an external imposition. It was coercion, not conviction. You do not make anyone ethical in this way. This is conditioning. It works with our dog, but not with human beings. A human being does not become ethical through conditioning. One becomes ethical through a deep understanding of what ethics is and what it brings to one's life. The peace of mind it gives, a good night's sleep, tranquility, harmony, and the happiness it provides. That is why one becomes ethical. Now, just because others will think, like that old story from the Roberto Carlos song, which I like so much. Do you know that one? Is everything I like illegal, immoral, or fattening? In other words, I like it. I don't do it because there are social norms that will punish me in some way. That is what he is saying here. Now, do we see this incorruptible nature within ourselves? Virtues are ways in which it acts in the world. This is also a key point. If I could choose a few points for you to take away from today, I would choose this one as one of them. Close your eyes and find within yourselves a point where you can say, this is truly me. I will talk about this in a moment. It is the origin of the word intelligence, intelligere, to choose among. You will turn inward and you will see the cultural processes of society, the family you come from, the temperament you inherited from your family, the interplay of opinions and passions that society tries to impose on you every day, the thoughts of the collective. You will find a cacophony of noise, and amidst all of it, a luminous point, which is symbolically represented as the idea of the center. You realize that this is me, finding oneself within oneself. Now, whatever you find within yourself, any action that arises from there, is legitimate and virtuous. You will say further on, you are beautiful. And if it does not come from there, then there is no true beauty in the world. Anything that comes from that luminous point, which you must find within yourself. The Egyptians called this the heart. Bathe all your thoughts, words, and actions in the waters of the heart. this luminous center that you must find. This I am, in the midst of all that I received, that was placed upon me, and that made me believe. This is who I am. This encounter with that center, which is neither casual nor accidental, is the result of a deep and daily search, as we discussed in the last lecture. He describes it as a daily and profound quest. What is the most important thing in life to find? Myself, where I feel at peace, where I feel in harmony, where I feel authentic. The encounter with this center will allow you to perceive the actions that originate from it. Everything that comes from it is virtuous. Isn't that interesting? For him, this is the great task of life. From the moment you find this, everything else, as the Christian tradition says, will be given to you in addition. Continuing. The Noble Eightfold Path, as I was saying, which comes from another very interesting Buddhist tradition, is the path that the Buddha presents for the liberation from suffering. He will say that the first step of the Noble Eightfold Path, there are 8 steps. It is often mistranslated because it comes from Pali, an ancient language, and is poorly translated into Western languages. It is often translated as thought. He says that the first step of the Noble Optical Path is discernment, which is synonymous with the intelligence I was speaking to you about. To discern is to separate the core. And discernment is not only in the sense of external choices, but also the internal choice within yourself. To distinguish oneself amidst all that you are not, to choose the good grain, to generate actions and reactions within your environment that lead to the path of wisdom and to other forms of righteousness. It is an interesting thing. As we were saying, once you have found this center, everything that arises from it is virtuous. And from it, all other virtues begin to surface. Virtue is not something, as he says, that works the way we imagine. First I develop this one, then that one, then another. No, it is not like that. He says that from the moment you possess truth, that virtue is alive within you, all the others emanate from it. There is no other way, they are interdependent. From the moment you find the center, everything radiates from it. Simultaneously, it is a matter of finding the truth within yourself. And then all the other forms of righteousness would follow, such as right speech, right livelihood, everything else would arise from this first one. Another interesting point he brings up is the will. The human will, this force, this power to act upon the world. He says that free will is innate to the movements of life. This authentic life, this center that exists within you, is a law of the universe that you have discovered within yourself. So when it manifests, it does so with an incredibly powerful force. You can observe this in the great figures of history, for example, in the capacity for compassion shown by Nelson Mandela. Do you notice that he did not shout to impose his compassion, but rather it was something that emanated through gentle words, yet with an extraordinary power and strength? He says that true will belongs to the laws of nature, and your essence is a law of nature. This will that comes from outside, for example, from that person who pushes the stone up the mountain, like the Greek Sisyphus, he says that this is obstinacy, it is induced will, it is coercion. In other words, that person who is making that effort, I will get there. We say, well, look at that person's willpower. No, you are a hard-working person, that's not bad. But you cannot control this effort if it strays in the wrong direction. This determined and obstinate person can become obstinate, in succeeding in life at any cost. Because obstinacy is not necessarily directed upwards, towards good. Obstinacy can turn into fanaticism. It can turn into dishonesty. It can turn into materialism. True will is only that which emanates from the being. Any other kind is dangerous, as it may deviate in other directions. It can turn into stubbornness and obstinacy, which are often disastrous. Virtue is fulfilled in action and never errs. He says that the Eastern idea of the golden mean, of right action, the action that emanates from this. The shining point within you cannot go astray, because it created the universe. It is a part of the law of the universe. Your essence is a part of the essence of the universe. It's as if you imagine an example I often give, which comes from the Indian tradition of Sutratma. Sutratma says that all beings in the universe are like beads on a necklace. Like the necklace she is wearing, you notice that there are different beads, but a single thread runs through all of them. Imagine one of these beads diving within itself, discovering that little piece of thread that passes through it. It will realize, I have found my essence. In truth, it has already found a fragment of the essence of the universe, a small piece of the thread that runs through all the beads in the universe, which is this divine essence of being. So, it is said that when you act from this essence, it is as if divinity itself is acting in the world. There is no mistake. It is the law that created the universe at work. There is no error. That is why it is said that a wise person's actions are precise. There is a sense of truth in the precision of their actions. Today, it is difficult for people to believe that a wise person exists. Those who seek wisdom, who draw near to it, develop an instinct to act with tremendous precision, because what acts within them is a part of the law of the universe. And the manner in which they act radiates a quality even more important than the outcome itself. This is quite an interesting thing. So, a person who is just may find that, at a certain historical moment, their justice is not well recognized by society. You will notice that this action, even if it was not successful, will make history and inspire people for generations to come. Because the quality of the action is more important than the result it produced. It is like a seed. Have you heard that about 3 years ago, they found a seed inside the sarcophagus of an Egyptian pharaoh, planted it, and it sprouted? Imagine what it means for a seed to have been there. I don't know exactly how long it was, but at least 25 centuries or more. It did not succeed because it was placed in a place that was not fertile, but when it was placed in the right place, it sprouted after 25 centuries. Because the quality of life was present within it. It's like throwing a seed onto asphalt. Well, the asphalt was not fertile, but the quality of life is still there. And one day, this quality of life will be recognized. You performed a just act, no one understood, but that does not matter. Your just act serves as a reference point. And it will become a reference for many people to follow, because it is not about the outcome, but about the quality you bring to what you do. The outcome sometimes depends on the historical moment, on the ignorance or wisdom of the people around you. These are things that do not depend on you, but the quality you bring to your action, that is what changes the world. This perspective of his is truly fascinating. The action of unified nature always generates harmonious actions within itself and among its parts. What does this mean? All the actions of a person, when they act from this center, from their own essence, are coherent with one another. When we are incoherent, it means that at one moment I act from one point, and at another, from a different one. There was a contradiction between myself and my own being, and that is why the actions become contradictory. A person who always acts from the same point, their actions are not only good in themselves, but they are all coherent with one another. Their life is like a symphony, with not a single note out of place. A wise person is like this. None of their actions are out of tune, as if life itself were a symphony. All actions are coherent with each other, because they originate from the same point. Like a skilled conductor, as long as he remains focused, not a single note is out of place. He lost his focus, and an instrument fell out of tune. He lost his sense of identity. If, ultimately, we wish to act well in the world, our first concern should be to discover who we truly are, so that we may manifest this in the world, and everything else would be assured. The form changes at every moment, for the action that creates it is endowed with sensitivity and life. This is also very interesting. Sometimes we get the impression that a wise person. Pay close attention, everyone. One of the most fascinating things is to imagine the possibility of a wise person existing. To imagine what such a person would be like. I've played with this idea many times. It's a very useful exercise. Do you know what? When reading about a wise person, this wise does such thing, I'd underline it. Then I would write everything down on poster boards and stick them on my wardrobe door. At that time, the era of the poster boards was very useful in my life because I needed to see what a wise person was like. I wanted to imagine what it would be like for a wise person to walk on the street, to face the traffic jam, to deal with my boss. I wanted to picture what a wise person would be like in the everyday moments, what that means. I needed to visualize it. This is very important because if you can't imagine a wise person, you have no way to pursue that as a goal in life. If your imagination is not guided by you, it will be shaped by the fantasies of society. You'll find yourself imagining that you are the hero of the primetime soap opera. Creating an image of what a wise person is, of how to respond to life with wisdom, is fundamental, a work of imagination that is truly useful. And he will say, then, that this wise person possesses this luminous center, but when he acts upon the world is never the same at any given moment. No two situations are ever identical. The world is constantly changing, all the time. Sometimes we get the impression that a wise person would be rigid, always strict, always acting in the same way. That is the most mistaken view there is. He would never have two identical actions. Because if you ask me something today and ask me the same thing tomorrow, you, tomorrow, are already someone else. Your need for an answer is different, and I will shape what you need to hear in order to grow. Do you understand this? It's like that story about the homeopathic doctor that I like to tell. Two people come into his office with the same symptom, and they leave with different medications. Do you know why? You are one human being with a cold, he is another. There is an entire context of life behind your cold that is not the same as his. And a doctor of this specialty will take that into account. With each moment, life keeps changing. I will adapt this light to the conditions that the manifested world requires. This light projected on the floor is not the same as this light projected on the grate, on the ceiling, or on her clothing. I will keep providing appropriate responses. Are you familiar with the story of the Buddha and the three young men who went to ask if God exists? Have you ever heard this story? The first one approached the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. Master, does God exist? He replied, no, God does not exist. His disciple, Ananda, was there beside him, watching. Silent, listening. Ananda was very disciplined, sitting beside him, listening. Then the second one comes. Master, does God exist? Yes, God exists. Ananda raises his eyes in surprise. What is happening with the Buddha today? Then the third one comes. Master, does God exist? It could be that he does. It could be that he doesn't. And then he leaves. I said, no, wait a minute, Master. All right, I am disciplined, but now you have left me conflicted. What on earth is this? All three asked the same question, but each received a different answer. I responded to each one's need, Ananda. How come? Of course. The first came here to challenge. He did not believe in me. Whatever I said, he would think the opposite. So I said no, and he would leave thinking yes, or at least trying to convince himself of it. The second believed in me, had devotion in me, and would believe whatever I said. I said yes. He left a believer. The third was a questioner. Whatever I said, he wanted to find the answer by his own means. So I said, it could be yes, it could be no, go for yourself. See? In other words, the wise possess this quality. The world is constantly changing, changing, changing. It is a light, precise, but it projects itself onto things according to the need and the response that each thing has. It would be quite surprising, I recall, and I have told this story many times, about the professor who brought New Acropolis to Brazil, Professor Michel Echenique, who was a great lecturer, truly excellent, a speaker with great empathy and the ability to deliver remarkable classes. When someone would ask him something, he would perform a very traditional gesture. He would look down at the floor, sometimes stroking his beard. And one day, I had to go there and ask, to play my role as Ananda, just once in my life. Master, when someone asks you a question, what are you thinking about? Are you focusing on the person's question? No, I am just emptying my mind. It is about emptying the mind in order to truly understand the person and respond to what they need. It is not a rehearsed answer that I have prepared. It was quite amusing because sometimes people would ask something, and at that time I was already a teacher, so I would imagine I would answer this, but he would answer something entirely different. It was truly hilarious. And the person would be satisfied because the answer he gave had nothing to do with what they had actually said, but rather addressed an inner need. He was very skillful, very experienced. You would wonder where he came up with that answer. You would ask the teacher and he would answer you. He answered exactly what I wanted and it had no sense. It was very curious, very interesting. So, this action is endowed with sensitivity and life. The action of the wise, which arises from this luminous point within you, is endowed with sensitivity and life. It possesses a radar to sense how to project itself into the world in the best possible way. Pure nature only produces perfect fruits. The fruits of this nature are more beautiful than any external beauty. The Indians have a very beautiful concept, which is Savitri, radiance. India has many gods, so there are several deities associated with a single phenomenon, in this case, fire, light. Savitri is simply the radiance. It is said that if something does not possess true fire, it has no radiance. Radiance is beauty, and true beauty only arises when within beings there is the true fire, which is the spiritual fire. Otherwise, it is merely an external, artificial radiance, a reflection. True beauty only comes from actions that originate from that luminous point within you. If not, it is merely appearance. In fact, within the Indian tradition, they had two words, one to say that something was beautiful, and another to say that something was merely attractive. Attractive is that which has a reflection, which may even be pleasant. But it is not a radiance that comes from an inner fire. True beauty requires a luminous essence. It requires that there be truth. He will say that fruits of this nature are more beautiful than any external beauty. Pure nature, he will say, is closely related to the Christian tradition of pure nature, which was Mary, and the perfectly beautiful fruit, which was Jesus. Only a pure nature, this idea of virginity, of purity, only a pure nature generates beautiful fruits. If not, it does not. And if there are no pure natures, there is no beauty in the world, there is only appearance. In fact, he will speak further ahead about the question of beauty in a marvelous way. It is rare to find an author who defines love and beauty as Sri Ram does. I have a chapter dedicated to each one. Spiritual nature is so malleable, sensitive, and harmonious that it changes at every moment, with nothing able to distort or hinder its action. Aspects of the harmony of the foundation are revealed. So, imagine the ocean. The water is always in motion, those small waves, sometimes large waves, and a light is cast upon it. Let us say, for example, the light of the moon. It illuminates certain points of the wave, which are its most beautiful angles. Material nature is always in motion. The manifested world is always changing every minute, always vibrating. When things are illuminated by the light of the Spirit, that is, when a wise being looks at things, they always see what is most true in them, what is most luminous. In other words, they see the beauty in all things. Sometimes they see beauty in a being who has not yet seen beauty within themselves. They can help that being to see the beauty within themselves, because there is nothing in the universe that does not have beauty within it. Do you understand this? Let me try to explain it more clearly. Imagine that you studied German back in high school. You know only a few words, you don't remember much anymore, but then you come across a person lost in the street who only speaks German. Wouldn't you have to bring up that bit of German, to be able to show them the way? And didn't this person give you the opportunity to bring out that little bit you knew, which you had already forgotten? It is said that a wise person, as they pass by others, compels people to bring their inner beauty to the surface. That is why they do not communicate with him easily. It is the only opportunity that person has to reveal a beauty they didn't even know they possessed. In other words, wherever he goes, he leaves a trail of light. He brings light to the surface. If you do not bring your light to the surface, there can be no communication with him. Everything has a hidden light within itself. He leaves behind a luminous trail. Do you understand this? Sometimes the ideas of Sri Ram are very metaphysical, so we have to come up with some unusual examples. He leaves a luminous path wherever he goes. He will say that there are fundamental virtues, virtues that belong to the essential nature of the soul. And there are auxiliary, practical, accessory virtues, which can be distorted. Just a moment ago, for example, we spoke about some of them. For instance, a person who has a lot of energy. It is a virtue that, if the person is good, a good thing. But if it is a criminal, delinquent, it would be better if he were less energetic. A person who is very clever can be a good thing. They will figure out the best way to do things with the least harm. But if they are dishonest, it would be better if they were a bit more naive, wouldn't it? In other words, there are virtues that are operational. They can be put into operation, but they are not foundational essential virtues. He said that in a materialistic era, we place more value on operational virtues, for example, that a person is clever, than on whether they are truly good. When someone is hiring an employee, for instance, you value cleverness more than goodness. You value energy more than fraternity. Do you see what I mean? Have you ever seen anyone place an ad in the newspaper saying, "I want a fraternal employee"? But having energy, being willing, having initiative, these are accessory virtues. If they are turned in the wrong direction, they can cause great harm. So, virtues such as humility, innocence, purity, and love, he says these are essential virtues. They are capable of generating the accessory virtues in the right direction. But when we are living in a materialistic era, the accessory virtues are regarded as the main ones. And sometimes, this leads to a series of misunderstandings. Diving deeply within oneself allows us to see both good and evil, inside and out, and to correct them without coercion. Imagine yourself as a father, a mother, educating a child, or a teenager, or a student, whoever it may be. Instead of simply saying, "Don't do that, or I'll punish you," you have the ability to help this person become aware. Why this is good. The goodness in this action. The kindness that emerges when they act in this way. In other words, do not take things from your peers. Well, things do not belong to you or to others. But respecting others will enable you to develop love and will allow you to help people grow. That is, to bring forth in the person an understanding of this act, instead of simply creating an external motivation. Do not act for that reason. Now, if you do it properly, you receive a certain reward. If you do not, you lose something else. Do you understand? Our educational process generates external motivators. You know that story that if you behave well, Santa Claus brings you a present, and the day you discover that Santa Claus does not exist, why would you behave well? Isn't it possible for us to help someone understand the value of kindness? Only if you possess kindness yourself. You cannot explain to me the taste of something you have never experienced. Do you understand? In other words, diving deeply within yourself allows you to know what is good and what is evil. Therefore, you are not easily manipulated. You look at things and see what is good and what is bad. You have your own unique perspective. You possess discernment because if you see yourself, if you are deep within yourself, you will be deep in all things. This too is inexorable. A person who is superficial with themselves, any opinion they have about the world will also be superficial. Can someone who does not know themselves truly know anything? Will they know how to use things for their own benefit? Will they know what things truly are? No, it's the story of know-how, of knowing how. Will they know why? No. So, they may be a good user, but not a wise person. Therefore, this journey within oneself is inevitable for anyone who wishes to enrich human life and help humanity to grow. A beautiful form expresses the quality of the soul that produced it, the flower of the soul. He says it is truly impressive when you have a bit of kindness within you and you look at a work of art. From someone who was more than just a technician, but a good person. And you feel that it is not simply an aesthetic beauty, there is something more. Have you ever noticed this? A person, for example, who sings well or plays an instrument beautifully. You notice that the person is technically perfect, but it doesn't move you, it doesn't touch your emotions. Sometimes, someone who is less technically skilled or who doesn't sing as well, you can sense an expression of such deep feeling that you say, "How beautiful." Haven't you ever witnessed this? Recognizing beauty in something that may not be technically the best, you realize that something emanates from within. I always remember that Argentine composer, whose name I always forget. I'll remember it soon. I know that one time they praised him. Oh, I hate to forget names, Will, but how? No, he's a very famous composer, and now the name has completely escaped me. I know that on one occasion they praised him because he had played very well, Astor Piazzolla. And he said, "Look, I often play well, but I rarely make music." I found that so touching, so profound, from someone who knew what he was saying. Many times I play well, few times I make music. And if you know what it is to make music, in some way, not music through instruments, but music through your words, through your life, through your actions, even if you have never studied music in your life, when you hear this person playing, you will recognize it. That is beautiful. That which was called the trustworthy observer. Kant, Hillmich, we were talking about this. If you want to know, in a world, I don't know, of ancient Indian music, which I know nothing about, in there, what was good music? What do? I find a virtuous man, an Indian, and I ask him. A virtuous person, incapable of recognizing what is beautiful. Why? Because inner harmony allows him to recognize the outer harmony. This is what he called the trustworthy observer. A copy is no longer capable of this. Do you know why? Because the copy does not exist. Let us suppose I take a moment of Michelangelo's ecstasy, which is the creation of Adam, where God is awakening man to spiritual consciousness. And I try to make a technically perfect copy. Because there are no two identical things in the universe. There will always be something missing that came from within Michelangelo, something that cannot come from within me, if I have nothing inside. I will do a copy that has an identical body, perhaps very similar, because identical does not exist. But something will prevent the soul from incarnating there. And it will not convey the same thing that the original would transmit. This is very interesting for anyone who has ever seen a work by Michelangelo. I remember Moses well, because people are left in awe before it, even children. Everyone stands there looking, wondering, what is this? It is something out of the ordinary. You sense something more than just a well-sculpted stone, technically well-crafted. A skilled person can make an identical copy and it does not stir your emotions. No matter how similar it is, it does not awaken your feelings. It's curious, isn't it? Truly beautiful things come from the soul, and a part of that soul is infused within them. He says that this is true beauty, it is the flower of the soul. Virtues are manifestations of the soul's timeless beauty. They arise when one is altruistic, that is, when the small self is removed. In other words, virtues are manifestations of that light you carry within you. These are the virtues, the ones that bring beauty to the world. Now he will say, it is extremely difficult to uproot this small self, because it subconsciously embeds itself in our actions. In other words, it is not a battle you will fight today and, by tomorrow, have no trace of selfishness left in your affairs. Everything I do is for the good of humanity. Everything I do is to illuminate the path. But look, it will disguise itself and persist, because things that are alive struggle to keep on living. This little selfishness will creep into your distraction gaps, and when you least expect it, it will be there. Have you ever been in that situation where you have a commitment to fulfill, and then you feel colossal laziness? No, you don't go. Leave it. No need. No one needs you. They won't even miss you. Leave it be. And you say, no, I will. I made a commitment. I will. And you get up, go there, and arrive. Then you say, I overcame the small self. I did. When you reach the door of your commitment, what is the first thing your mind tells you? You are good, aren't you? You actually came. Look, someone else wouldn't have come. Someone else, in your place, wouldn't have come. See how special you are. Doesn't that happen? In other words, right at the very end, Vanity. That is, this little personalistic selfishness never fully admits defeat. It always takes a little piece. It has to take something. It can never be completely defeated. It never leaves empty-handed. You say, wow, you did so much and yet there it is. No, it's fine. I won in part. Now I see another part. Let's start working on that now. But it wasn't in vain. This is so that you don't develop a mindset of, let's say, easy success and then get disappointed at the first setback. You know that person who decided, I don't know, to stop eating sweets. Then they lost control, ate a little candy, and now they think, oh, forget it, let me just eat. Then they eat 10 chocolate bars. No, you just ate one piece of candy, so start again. Because success is not easy. A small defeat is okay, but let me start over. It's not easy to overcome a small mistake, but it can be done because someone has already succeeded one day. That is what he is trying to say. Do not expect success to be easy, because this is one of the greatest enemies of achievement, believing that it will be easy. You create illusions that will defeat you at the very first attempt. If one quality of the soul is cultivated to perfection, it draws the others along with it. It is not necessary to cultivate them one after another, as if you were lining them up in a row. Now, generosity. Tomorrow, altruism. Then, something else. You imagine a person. Then justice. Imagine a person who achieves 100% generosity. Is it possible for them not to be just? Is it possible for them not to be loving? Is it possible for them not to be altruistic? Because if they possess 100% generosity, they will have to use. They will have everything at the same time. All these virtues are radiations of a single source. They are merely different facets of a prism that you are observing. If you attain the fullness of one, you possess them all. So, how is that possible? Can a person who is 100% just not also be honest? How could that be? No, honesty is for tomorrow. Today is only about justice. That won't work. In other words, it is not a sequence. This is interesting because when you discover within yourself that virtue which shines the brightest, let's say, I am a generous person. If you seek to cultivate this generosity, working with what you have the greatest gift or ease for, you will notice that it naturally draws the other virtues along with it. It is a point of least resistance, and it is a good place to begin your work. Virtue cannot be taught through words. It can be transmitted through a state of communion. True love, for example, I will do a lesson for you on what love is. I have already given many lectures, many talks. I do not believe that anyone becomes more loving because of this, just because I speak well or because the words are beautiful. Now, if I am able to cultivate a measure of true love within myself, a measure of this virtue, I am capable of allowing something of this virtue to generate a light that awakens a little of it in those who wish to listen to me, who wish to receive it. Do you see? Because human beings also possess free will, and what they do not wish to develop cannot be forced upon them. If you desire love and I possess something of it, I can create a communion in which I illuminate a little of that love within you. Plato said that the best thing we can do for the people we love is to grow as human beings. And if you have something to give, but do not give it, even through words, it is still a form of communion. It is as if the light within me casts some light within you, brings something to the surface, educates. This is the root of the word education, brings forth what is hidden. The true nature of love is unknown to most people. He will dedicate an entire chapter to discussing the true nature of love. It is very beautiful, but he will say that true love, as a characteristic, is an inner light that illuminates things. So, those who possess true love have the ability to illuminate every situation, allowing each one to reveal something good. A person who carries a measure of true love finds nothing negative in their life, because they see things through the lens of this love and everything reveals a luminous side. You know that person who, when you are with them, it feels as if life becomes easier. The wise person is always like this. Being by their side makes all of life easier. Why is that? Because they are able to illuminate everything and reveal something positive, good, and constructive. They are able to show that life is always contributing to the growth of all who wish to grow. They look at everything with this focus. Therefore, they bring forth the luminous side of every person. And finally, the action of the spiritual nature is spontaneous and unrestrained. And the beauty of virtue lies in this complete self-giving. Do you already know what it means to be virtuous? It is to know who you are and to act in the world from that which you truly are. A complete offering of your nature, expressed through your actions and your words. Never betray your nature in what you manifest in the world. To discover who you are and radiate that light throughout your life. In other words, it is an exercise, a constant exercise of seeking, of discovering within ourselves what it means to be human, what is my essence, what is expected of me in the world, what I have come here to do, and to manifest it, to consult it in every action, to illuminate all my actions from this point of origin. This is what it means to be a virtuous person. And from this discovery, from this identity, all other virtues will be granted by extension. This is a definition of his that I find very concise, very interesting, and original. It is rare to see someone define virtue through identity. For Sri Ram, virtue is identity. If one has not discovered within themselves their human self, the self with a capital S, any virtue they possess is merely a mask. Just for show, as the saying goes. It is merely a convention, and it will not be constant, nor will it be transformative. It will not make history, nor will it help people to grow. It will not generate beauty. It will not illuminate the path. And that is basically it. Today, this is our chapter on virtue. As I mentioned to you, it is truly worthwhile to have this book, to read it, especially to read it while following along with the lectures we are giving, so that you can ask questions and seek clarification. You will see that there are things ahead that are truly fantastic, truly remarkable. Each chapter sheds light on a profoundly important aspect of life. And do not forget, every day, to reflect, what did I do today? When was I truly myself? Who was I in the midst of today? That action, no, that was just a convention. That was a habit, that was complacency. Now this one, that was me. This is my jewel of the day. Tomorrow, I will cultivate more of this kind of action and act from that place. To seek oneself within your day, every single day. Today, I was not truly myself at any point. Tomorrow, I must turn this around. I need to find a moment where I was truly me. A small action where I recognize myself, this was me, and to cultivate more of this spirit, to work from this place. To radiate, to expand boundaries, to find yourself every day, even if just for a minute, from you to yourself, and to develop this further. Actions from this place will be virtues. They may even be correct, but they are not truly good,